Communication is so important, and one of the quotes that I like is Bernard Shaw, and he says the biggest illusion with communication is people think that just because you've communicated, that communication has taken place. And it's important to be able to find a middle ground when it comes to communication. So actually listening so that you can hear what's being said, and then taking a moment before you respond. In order to fulfill your vision, like my business has to be sustainable so I can continue to spread the message. So it's not just about the money, but we need the money to spread the message so we can accomplish the mission.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, if you're only listening to this episode, you can also watch it on YouTube. Regardless if you're listening or watching, I really appreciate your support. Today, I have the honor of having Shaneice Miller-Thomas on the show. She's a certified John Maxwell coach, trainer, and speaker, and behavior analyst. Can't talk, apparently. She specialized in facilitating personal growth and purpose discovery. I know we're going to get into a lot of different things. Before we do that, how about you introduce yourself the way you would do it, Shaneice?
All right, fantastic. Hello, everyone. I like to call myself a human farmer. I say I grow people. So going out there to help people grow personally is my specialty. I like to specialize in personal growth over professional growth. Not that you don't need both, but most often organizations will get the skills that people need. Like they will help them professionally. But what they don't realize is that people bring themselves to work. And if we don't address the person, then that will impact their performance. So I also like to come in and help organizations with behaviors and communication so that they can reduce stress, they can improve their productivity, and they can have a happier work environment so that people will be more productive.
That is powerful. Yeah, we do bring our whole selves to work. And I think the last definitely 10, 15 years, it's been more intentional that people are realizing that. Yeah. I think for the longest time, it was just keep your work life, keep your personal life separate, but like now it's intermingled.
Yes. Personal performance impacts that professional performance. So whoever you are as a person, it's not like you drop all of your issues at the door when you come to work. You bring all of those things. And whenever leaders invest in their people personally, it helps people feel like they can trust their leader more, like they care about me as a person.
Yeah, that's really key to leadership, is building that trust. So I want to make sure people know how you got to doing all this, because you haven't always been doing this. So I guess kind of talk us through your journey, and like, how did you decide this is what you wanted to do, and what were some of the steps you took along the way?
It's very interesting. I would say that the profession chose me, and that has kind of been my life story in every career aspiration that I've had. And I started out as an educator, so I've always been someone who was speaking and presenting and teaching and talking. I even grew up as a kid who got sent to my room for talking too much, singing too much, like just being too much. But typically, whatever you are too much of is usually your place of your gifting and your talent. It just has to be honed. It just has to be refined. And that's usually the place where your gifts and talents lie. So I just needed to hone that. And what better way than to be a teacher and have a captive audience where they had to listen to me every day. I'm like, you're forced to listen to me talk. So talking has just always kind of been my thing. And so I went into education, and then I went into administration. And administration kind of caused me to crash and burn. It just was not for my personality. And had I really known who I was authentically, I would have been able to kind of navigate that a little bit better. I had someone talk me into, it was kind of the way I got into everything. Like One day a teacher said to me in high school, wow, you explained that problem so great. You should be a teacher. Okay, I should be a teacher. And then when I was a teacher, somebody came into my room and said, you have such great leadership skills. You should be in administration. You should be a principal. So I became a principal.
Wow.
And so I went into those different professions without, again, really knowing who I was as a person. But all of those skills are the things that I bring to what I'm doing today. I also, from there, when I left the education profession, someone talked me into doing a website for them.
Really?
And I was doing websites, but it was just a hobby. I was doing it. I made jewelry. I was like, I just need a place to catalog my jewelry that I'm making. And she's like, hey, I need a website. And I'm like, I don't do websites for people. She's like, I need a website. So again, someone talked me into something and it became a whole business. So I started doing marketing for small businesses. And again, that skill has helped me to get to where I am now, where I understand branding, I understand marketing for myself. And that led me to talking to someone at my church named Paul. Somehow I met this guy, and we actually met at one of the banquets at church for people who volunteer at church. And we ended up sitting next to each other, which was what spawned my initial podcast at the time. And he's like, yeah, I have this podcast, which we've now learned this is episode 100 something?
Yeah. So I guess I'll interrupt it a little bit. Like, you were actually on episode 9 of this podcast. And now, depending on where this lies, it's definitely over 100 episodes later that you're back on.
Amazing. So he's kind of been I've called him my secret mentor all this time. He didn't know that I was following his every step and his every move, but being able to have someone in front of you who's doing the things that you want to do successfully helped to give me a roadmap. So you were the one that talked to me about John Maxwell, and it was something I had looked into a little bit, but I didn't really know about it. So I was able to come up under you, and you told me about the program. And at the time, it was not within my budget to do. So I'll just kind of put it on the shelf. And then the opportunity came back around, and it was the right season and the right time. And I got certified this past August as a John Maxwell leadership team coach, speaker, trainer. And that has helped to give me the confidence and the leadership and mentorship that I need through the program.
Wow, that's just divine interactions. I know we've said a couple of times that when we meet, it's just like always the right timing about different things. And I think it's funny just to see how things have just come full circle, because the first time I had you on the podcast, I think there's like a shorter recording of it on YouTube, but it's not even the full interview. So it was really before I decided I would be full blown into podcasting. I think that was in the 2022, and now we're in 2025. And just to see that, I know you keep saying that I'm your secret mentor, but you keep saying, so it's not really a secret anymore.
Not a secret anymore. The secret is out. I've been stalking you.
The secret is out. But no, it's just incredible to see how God has been using all the different things you've been a part of, and definitely want to dive into it in this episode.
Fantastic. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Because I know a lot of the stuff you do with the Maxwell leadership, even before, is this communication part. Because I know I was like torn between like what we're going to talk about: communication, purpose. We might end up talking about both, but about communication, as someone who was an educator, did a lot of stuff in schools, administration, and is doing a lot of stuff with leaders and organizations around. Why is communication so important to someone that may not necessarily be, quote, a leader?
Communication is so important. And one of the quotes that I like is Bernard Shaw. And he says, the biggest illusion with communication is people think that just because you've communicated, that communication has taken place. And that's a longer version of what he said, but that is my understanding of just because you say something, it doesn't mean that it was received the way it was intended. And I give this little joke when I talk about communication. And I said, one day my husband asked me if I needed some more deodorant. He's like, hey, do you need some more deodorant? And I went, why? Do I stink? And he said, no, because it's on sale. So whenever we communicate with people, it gets filtered through all kinds of different things, your experiences. It gets filtered through your relationships and whether or not you trust people. So communication is not just important for leaders, but it's especially important for everyone. And I don't think that we realize that communication is a skill. We all do it every day, but we don't necessarily work to become more effective. And for leaders, the main reason why it's important is because in order to accomplish your mission, your values, your vision for your organization, you have to be able to effectively communicate the vision and get people to buy into it. So that's so important for leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how you tied it back into the importance for leaders. And even from, I think most of the people who listen to this podcast are either know they're a leader or like in the middle of their leadership journey. So we're talking to leaders for the most part. It's called IncrediPaul leadership for a reason. But I think it's really important that you mentioned that communication is a skill. Like some people may be more apt to it at first, but it's something that you can learn and develop. And I don't know if you agree or like what part of communication as far as listening, how that impacts communication. I know you mentioned the situation with your husband was asking if you needed to yield it or not, that he was able to clarify it. But I think a lot of communication comes from listening. And when people first hear it, they think of just saying.
Yes. We often listen to respond. We're waiting. So we're not even actively listening. We're just waiting to give our response to what's being said. So I believe that empathy is a very important part of active listening, because in order to hear what's being said, you want to hear it as if you're in that person's shoes and not just from your own personal point of view. And with us being in a world where things are so divided, everyone has access to information, so everyone believes they're an expert. So we know everything because of the internet. Like the internet is my daughter even told me that one day. She's like, well, it's on Google, so it must be true. And we're growing up in a world where people think that just because they have access to information, that they have access to truth. And what they actually have access to is knowledge. You can get on there and get knowledge, but truth is something different because it just depends on how it resonates with what you believe and what your values are. So when we have differing values, sometimes we have competing communication. It's like, well, I don't believe what you believe, so it can't be true. And we're just not going to be friends. And it's important to be able to find a middle ground when it comes to communication. So actually listening so that you can hear what's being said and then taking a moment before you respond. That's one of the things we were talking about with Toastmasters, like table topics. Being able to off the cuff come up with a response, but being thoughtful in that response is important.
Yeah, being thoughtful is definitely something. It takes time. It takes introspection. I think a lot of times even when you're doing speeches or a lot of stuff with the table topics, there's some stuff you've already thought about, and then you're just kind of putting it to words as you're actually speaking. Yeah. We could go on and on about Toastmasters, and we were talking about it before that I'm trying to get more involved in it and practice my communication skills, which is honestly why I wanted to do podcasting, because one of the things that they teach within Maxwell Leadership with speaking is to record yourself talking and understand your vocal variety, your tone, body language, all those things. And I thought, podcasting is a great way to do it. Kill two birds with one stone, and then also put it out. And I thought, okay, I'll do this for a little bit, and then I'll just stop podcasting. But over 100 episodes later, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. It's a great vehicle, and Toastmasters is one of the places where I say speaking is a skill, and it's like a muscle. People will hear me speak and they'll say, wow, you're so good at speaking. Wow, you have such a great... And I'm like, no, I'm not great. I have practiced. I have practiced, because otherwise you become some type of unattainable goal for people. And they're like, I'll never be able to do that. So I always take it from a place of humanity and let people know it's not that I know things, because honestly, there's only one person that is all knowing. That's God.
Yeah.
And I'll tell people, I don't know things. I have learned. And I take that from a point of humility. Like, I don't know how to tie my shoes. I have learned how to tie my shoes, because God forbid something happens. Anything could happen to your brain. What do you know? Everything that we have access to are things that we have learned. So I tell people that you can get better. It just takes practice. It takes reps. It's like going to the gym. You can't say, I'm going to get better at speaking, and you don't practice speaking, or you do it once a month. So Toastmasters and the Maxwell team is a great place to be able to practice those skills.
Absolutely. Getting those reps in, getting the practice. And I think the community aspect of it is important, having the people around you, because, and I'm thinking back because this was one of the first, I think it was the second mastermind I did with the 15 Valuable Laws of Growth, which you were in.
I was going to say, that was one of the books that I chose tonight. I was like, if you see my book, it's all tattered, like it's falling apart, because it's kind of like my personal growth Bible. Like,
yes,
I'm in it all the time.
Yes. Yeah, it's mine too. I started reading it every year for the last few years, because it's just something to keep going back to. I know one of the things, I think it was Law 4, called the Law of Environment, where if you're in the right environment, it accelerates your growth. If you're in the wrong environment, it can make your growth slow. Because I think sometimes when we're trying to change or grow, we try and do a lot of different things, or we're still in the same environment, and that can kind of stifle it. But when you get into a new environment, that's an opportunity to start to form new habits, do new things, as your bodies or your mind is trying to make new connections, because we are inherently trying to make shortcuts all the time. So if it's stuff that we can recognize, we're going to slip back into the old habits. I suppose if we start in a new environment, then it's easier, not easy, but easier to make new habits.
Yeah, it makes you level up. If John Maxwell talks about that all the time, like if you're the smartest person in the room, if you're the smartest person in your group, like you're in the wrong group. You need to get around some people that are going to push you. And there's nothing like being around people who are making 6-7 figures that you're like, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. And they're going to show me how to do that. So it forces you to continue to put in the reps in, just being consistent with every day. Now, when I look at my schedule, and this is a great approach for leadership, is, what is an income producing activity I can do today? Like, there are lots of things I can do, and we know that all activity is not productivity. So you can be doing things. That doesn't mean that you're getting anything done. And that has been my life story, because I love busyness. But I'm an I. So being an I, someone who's interested in people, I don't do things very well. So I get excited about something, then I'm like, next. So being a solopreneur, it's on you, bro. Like, you gotta finish it. It's up to you to finish. And that is my word for this year. My 2025 word for this year is finish.
Finish. I like that. And you also mentioned I. So for those listening, and I don't think I've really ever talked about this much on the podcast. So maybe this is where we'll go. The I, or the influence, and there's DISC. If you want to talk through like what that really means, I know you're doing stuff in the DISC place as a behavior analyst.
Yes, I love DISC. DISC is the 4 personality types, and we have a John Maxwell DISC. So when people talk to me about DISC, they say, oh, well, I've done something like that. And I make sure that I make the distinction that the John Maxwell DISC is different. We have the power disc. We have the leadership skills that are ingrained within our results. So typically what you would do is you would take a DISC personality assessment, and it could take you, 7 to 10 minutes to answer a set of questions. And what those questions do is it helps you with your communication. It tells you how you communicate, and it also gives you what motivates you, what's your ideal environment. And it also helps you understand how to communicate with these other personality types. So when I talk about my husband and I say I'm an IS, okay? So an I is someone who is influential. They love being interested in people, all of those things. He is on the completely opposite spectrum from me. So he would be a CD personality. So that is just completely different. So now I understand that he's like, get to the point. I could be I've been offended by that. I'm like, I want to tell the whole story because eyes are talkative. It's like, get to the point. And now when I understand that I can get to the point. I know he wants details. When I come to him with something, he's not going to make a quick decision. I'm like, hey, let's go to the moon kind of person. And he's like, wait a minute. How much is it going to cost? What's the drive? What's the, all of those things. So as leaders, I give them examples of how this can be so valuable to your organization. It's also great for hiring. Whenever you get ready to hire someone for a position, if you have someone who is not interested in people and that's not part of their personality type, you might not want to put them out front. They might not be the person that's going to greet people because they don't like people. That's not their strong suit.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conflict and issues that come on jobs or when people are in positions, it's often because they're just not in the right place for their personality. Yeah. So when they're able to get in the right spot, you will see them shine using their strengths.
Shine using their strengths. That's so key, because I think a lot of times we can get caught up in trying to fix our weaknesses. But I think it's another thing that John Maxwell talks about is that you're always going to have your weaknesses. Like, get your weaknesses up to a certain level that it's not detrimental to you, but you really try to focus in on your strengths and sharpen those things.
Right. I'm never going to be the person who's the CD. Like the C, they're careful, they're cautious, they are very, all of the C words, conscientious. Like they are people who are not going to be quick to make decisions. Then you have your D people. They're a little bit more direction focused. They are driven. They are get to the point kind of people. And so I'm not the person that you want to assign, please edit this 50-page document. Ooh, like, just pull my fingernails out. Please, just anything. But something with that. But if you want me to get in front of people and entertain, like that is my strong suit. So being able to know who you are and how you communicate is valuable. But it's even more valuable to understand who you have on your team. So when I go into organizations, I create a directory for them. And I say, these are all the people on your team, and this is how they communicate. So when you know how to communicate with them, that's half the battle. So you don't get into some of these team dynamic issues.
Absolutely. Just meeting people where they're at. I think that's really critical. And I'm curious, I'm going to put you on the spot a little because you've known me for a little while. If you haven't guessed onto what this personality profile is.
Oh,
what do you think it is? It's what you say.
I think you're a CD.
You think I'm a CD?
Yeah.
You would be correct.
Yeah, I was like, he's definitely a CD.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I remember the first time I took this, it was like 6 years ago, and with my team. So we went through it. It was like a full day thing, and everyone thought I was an I. And I was like, I don't know if I'm an I. I didn't know anything about this. And they're like, oh, for sure you're an I. And then they saw a CD. They're like, what the heck? Wait, what's going on? Like, I was like, no, I'm pretty conscientious, methodical about things. I mean, because with DISC, and they talk about it too, you have all the aspects of DISC. It's just the ones that you like go to when you're stressed or whatever, right? Or what you like gravitate to. But I know the assessment I took had like where you are on the graph, whether you're closer to the center or further on to the end. So the further out from the center you are, the more deeply ingrained you are. So at least when I took it, I was really close to the center, so I can kind of like flex to the other ones.
Yeah.
And so I think my C personality helps me to analyze when I want to use which one, depending on who I'm talking to, what situations I'm in. I think I'm even doing it right now, just breaking down my personality.
That's what we call the chameleon. And so those are the people who they hover around that center line, and we give the different graphs, like how you are personally, how you are in private, how you are in public, and then what is your personality under stress. And typically your second trait that is the strongest typically gets higher when you're under stress. So for me, I'm a high I in private, and I'm a high I in public, but under stress, my S gets higher. So I'm slower, I'm steadier. I'm not really quick to make decisions there. I'm a team player kind of thing. So I slow down a little bit whenever I'm under stress. So I think my personality is great, but we all need a little bit of everything, because everybody's gonna be like, oh, which one is the best? Well, whichever one you have is the best, because that's what's suited for you to do what you've been called to do. That's where your purpose lies.
Yeah.
And we need all of it. We need all of it. I need C's and D's. I love C's and D's. They do the stuff that I don't want to do.
It's the balance. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of times we want to figure out, okay, what is the ideal personality trait? What is the ideal job, the ideal thing, all these different things. But I think at the end of the day, it's like doing what you can with where you're at, but not being stuck where you are, being intentional about your growth.
Doing where you can, where you're at, but not getting stuck there. Yeah, because you can take that either way, be like, well, this is just me and this is how I am. Well, that's not very good, because then you're not adaptable. So any kind of personality type can be a leader, as long as you're flexible and adaptable to meet the needs of the people who are serving you and trying to help you reach your goals and your mission.
It's very powerful. And I know you talked about purpose briefly, and you do a lot of stuff with purpose discovery. And I definitely want you to talk about that. We were talking about communication, but I want you to dive into that. Like, who are the people you typically work with on this purpose journey?
Well, I like to work with individuals and organizations as well. From an individual standpoint, that came about for me whenever I left the education profession. And so oftentimes we feel like our purpose is tied to our profession. But I would like to ask people, well, what happens when you are not in that profession any longer? What happens if you lose your job? What if you change careers? What are you going to do? Do you feel like you don't have a purpose? And that's where I was. It really sent me into a depression, honestly. I just was like, what am I going to do with my life now? I have dedicated all of this time in my career, all of this money in education. And it really is the question of, who am I? Most of the time when people come up and they say, well, what do you do? The question they're really asking is, who are you? And I am more than what I do. So when it comes to purpose, I want people to understand that your purpose can be found in 3 different ways. I say it can be found through your pain or the pain of someone else. So maybe it's someone who's experienced some trauma, or they've been through a difficult time. How do you want to serve people and help others come out of that? Because purpose is about service. So maybe it's someone else's pain. You saw someone maybe experience domestic violence and you want to do something about it. The other place people can find purpose is in problems, maybe world issues or social problems. You see a homeless person, you're like, man, I wish I could help them. Oh, that's so sad. Or maybe it's homeless children or teens or hunger, or all of these different areas where when you see it, it causes you to pause. When something causes you to pause and it's a problem that you want to fix, that might be a place of purpose for you. So another place is passion. What is it that if nobody paid you, you would do it every day? Now, we hope you get paid for doing your purpose, but maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a passion project. Maybe you love music and you want to teach other kids music, or you love reading and you want to share your love of reading or painting. So whatever that passion is. So the way to marry that for leaders and their organization is sometimes they overlook people's purpose because they have their own purpose. My purpose is we're going to make money. My purpose here is we're going to fix cars, or we're going to whatever that thing is that they have written up in their organization's mission statement. The best way to approach that is to find out what people's personal purpose is and how you can align that with the purpose and the mission of the business. So, hey, how can I find this person who maybe they love organization and they wish they could be like a professional organizer, and take that and put that skill to use on their professional job as well. So for me, figuring out what I wanted to do is a journey, and it continues to evolve. Like, this is what I'm doing now, may not be what I'm doing 10, 15 years from now. So don't get stuck in saying I'm only tied to my purpose when I'm tied to this particular profession or career.
So that's really good, because I definitely found myself like that even while I was doing some of the stuff with IncrediPaul. Is I think, because I've shared on the podcast, I've worked for multiple Fortune 500 companies. I mean, it sounds great, but it just means I keep changing jobs because it's not like, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so I remember that when the last one I had, when I was at Nestle Purina, like my identity was in being a Nestle Purina employee, being a process engineer, all those different things. And then I went to another company, and then it was not one that, at least the culture there, the company as a whole was fine. Culture in that facility was not great, so I just won't share it. But it was, so I was asking myself, okay, I always would introduce myself by what my profession was, even though I had this other side profession. And because for whatever reason, maybe it's imposter syndrome, whatever it was, I didn't fully see myself as IncrediPaul, even though that's who I branded myself. I was like, oh yeah, that's who I am when I'm not at work. But when I am at
incredible.
work, yeah. When I'm at work, I'm an engineer, or I'm doing all these different things.
Yeah.
And so, like, to your point, like, something I think it happens a lot that people get laid off. But in mine, it was when I was in a job and a company that I didn't necessarily love. And now that's the question, like, is this really my identity, who I am? And I realized, like, no, it's not. Like, even if whatever job I'm at, whether IncrediPaul, nonprofit, whatever I'm doing, like, the mission statement I have for IncrediPaul is empower young professionals to become the most incredible versions of themselves. But that's really what my mission statement for life is something I've learned as one of my God-given gifts is encouragement. And so I've been more intentional about whether it's specifically in IncrediPaul, specifically at work, or just sometimes in the grocery store, just interact with people at hotels that I travel a decent amount, and giving people encouragement. And I can see that a lot of times it just really brightens them up. And it's just a simple thing, but I just noticed that as a gift, because people have told me it, and I can tell that they're like, oh, like, no one has told me that, or I was just thinking about that. And I could pick up on things in people that they don't always see in themselves. So I try to be more intentional about saying it.
Yeah, that is incredible. And you are incredible.
Thank you.
Yes, I understand that as well. Just finding out what that strength is. And I personally don't ask people what they do unless I'm in a networking environment, only because I don't want you to just be what you do, because that was a terrifying question for me when I didn't have a 9-to-5. I was like, what am I going to say when someone asks me what I do? I'm a stay-at-home mom. And it's like there's this stigma attached to, I even had to go into like my LinkedIn profile, and I was like so happy now that they have career breaks that you can put in for parenting, to just be like, hey, I was working, but I did not have a job at this time, to kind of give an explanation for gaps in that employment, because that's just not who you are completely. So I like to ask people probing questions about their life, like, hey, tell me about the best movie you've seen recently. Tell me about your favorite book. What's your favorite hobby? Where have you been on vacation lately? Like, there are so many things to know about people besides what they do. And you know this, being a St. Louisan, which I didn't know because I'm a native North Carolinian. I'm from down south. And so I come here and this question about where did you go to high school? I'm like, high school? Where I'm from, people say, where'd you go to college? Maybe.
Yeah.
Not high school, but it's this demographic question just to head people into, oh, you went there or you're from that part of town. So that's a communication thing for me that I think is good for people, just in getting to know people as people and not just deciding what their value is based on what they do or where they live.
Yeah, that's really key. Not just what they do or where they live. Especially, and there was a podcast I was listening to. It was the Diary of the CEO podcast. Really great podcast. And I can't remember the name of the guest, but she does a lot of stuff with communication. And she said that, like, what she challenged everyone is, don't ask people what they do, because that can be a source of anxiety, like what you said, if like they are in between jobs or things, and it doesn't really give you a sense of who they are either. So they said a better question to ask is, what are they passionate about, or what are they looking forward to, or do they have something exciting coming up? Because that allows them, like, maybe what they're excited about, what's coming up, has to do at work, and they might talk about that. But I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, does not live to work. We work to live. Yeah. So what we're doing is definitely more so, okay, I'm doing all these things, but I'm excited about taking this trip to Japan, or I'm doing all these things, I'm excited about this community outreach I'm going to be doing. And so when you ask the question, like, what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What are you looking forward to? You get to unlock more of the person, a better conversation, than asking them, oh, what do you do for work?
I like that approach. Yeah, that's really good. Really good.
Yeah, but communication, purpose, I know we talked about those two things, and all of those are key things for leadership. I guess from your perspective, is there another thing around leadership that you focus on with your clients?
It really is just those aspects are kind of like, I had to figure out, coming out of Maxwell, like, what is my thing going to be? Because at first, like, I have all these tools available, so I'm just going to do leadership. And then I was like, okay, but I also have to know what has been placed in my heart and what is my assignment and what is my purpose. So I think that is still just paramount for me, that I'm trying to stay in my lane. And I have, like I said, those tools available to me. And I created my own game as well. I know we have some games and different things that we can do, and I created my own game. So I played that recently with an organization, and it's called the Purpose Pursuit. So they have these questions where they can talk about and get to know each other and figure out, what is it that I love? What is it that I want to do? What's the direction that my life should be headed? So those are my favorite things. I've always studied in school. My second major was sociology. So I've always loved and enjoyed learning about people and how they interact and how they behave. So behaviors, communication, and purpose. And I'm like, that's my lane. That's what I was gifted to do. So learning about my authentic self, finally arriving at this place where people aren't telling me what I should do. That doesn't mean they won't stop, because that happened today. And they were like, hey, we really need a VP of this, and we think you would be great. And I said, not only is my plate full, but I have multiple plates, and they're all full, and I cannot. I used to let people talk me into things, and I have a friend, she says, don't let people should on you. And I said, I'm going to use that, because people, you should. And I've lived my life doing what I thought people thought I should be doing. But that's a hard place of setting boundaries for people, especially when you don't know who you are, or you have low self-esteem, and people will just pump you up and say, hey, you're so great at this, you should do this. And I'm like, oh, am I great? Maybe I should do this. But now I'm like, wait a minute, I'll still be great if I don't do that.
Yeah.
So your compliments are just a way of manipulating me into doing what you want me to do, because it benefits you. So we have to be on guard for our time, because when we say yes to one thing, we're automatically saying no to something else. So it doesn't give us the time, space, or opportunity to pursue the things that might be more profitable than me being tied up in this thing over here. And now, I hate to say it, but like, I've been without a consistent income for almost a decade now. Like, I have invested a lot of time in growing personally after I left the education profession. I'm like, hey, I need to figure out who I am and what I'm supposed to do. So I've done a lot of personal work. I've done counseling and therapy and all of those things to make sure that I'm on the right track. So now my question is, when someone says you should, I'm like, is this going to make me some money? How can I support my family? And of course, that's not the main focus. But in order to fulfill your vision, like, my business has to be sustainable so I can continue to spread the message. So it's not just about the money, but we need the money to spread the message so we can accomplish the mission. I might want to write that down. That was good.
Yeah. Need the money to accomplish the message so you can accomplish the mission?
Yes, the money to fund the message to accomplish the mission.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
We need the money.
I think, the money to fund the message to accomplish the mission.
And that's kind of a spin on something that John Maxwell said at the last conference that I was at, that it's like, he raises money he has a nonprofit and, does some other things. And it's like, hey, we have to charge people to do things, because when we do, we're able to spread that message farther and wider. Like, it just takes money to do these things, to travel, to create the materials, to pay for the podcast things and all of that stuff. So I've had to not be afraid to ask people for money and to know what my worth is. I even turned down a job recently, and it came to me like, he doesn't think you're worth that much. And he had the budget. He had like a 5-figure budget, but he whittled me down, and we kept going back and forth, and he just wouldn't pay the price that I was asking for. And I realized that he didn't think I was worth that much. So all money is not good money. And there are barriers sometimes to being out here in this environment as a Black woman, as a minority, as a, all of those things that I have to say, hey, no, I am worth it. I have over 20 years of experience in my field, coaching, training, speaking. Although I just had, a physical LLC since 2020. No, I've been doing this. I bring all of me to this. So I want to encourage people to not devalue themselves and not let someone tell you what you're worth, to go after it. Somebody will pay.
Yeah. No, that's a really good message to go after, because I think, and even what you said about all money not being good money, because I think a lot of times when we're struggling, or we're trying to even tell ourselves that we're doing the right thing, we get caught up in just doing whoever is saying yes. And I'll be honest, that's part of the reason why I still work full time as an engineer, because like, I love all the stuff with speaking and podcasting, coaching, but I did, at least for right now, did not want that to influence what I say yes to. So there's a lot of things I just say no to, because I'm like, I don't really need this. It's just like, this is just an additional thing I have. So I get to do exactly what I want to do. If it comes a time where I'm a full-time entrepreneur and that's what God wants, great. But for what it is, like, I'm able to pick and choose what I want to do, what I need to do.
Absolutely. That independence is important. And that's what I love about being an entrepreneur, is that there's no cap. And I'm in charge of, what I do with my time. And when my daughter texts me like she did today, it was like, oh, Mom, I have volleyball today and I left my shoes at home. There's no problem for me to go and pick up some shoes and drop them off by the school. Like, those things are important. And that's the other place for me in finding balance, is when I'm looking at the things that I need to do. And there's a long list of to-do things that will never be too done. So just go ahead and get that out of your head. The to-do list will never be too done. It just is forever. It's forever. It's like washing dishes or washing clothes. Like, there's not a time in life where it's going to end. Just come to the conclusion that it's just a part of life. But being able to be there for my family has to be top priority when I'm deciding, do I go to this event where they're saying, hey, we're going to have all of these influencers there, and this is a recent thing. Hey, we're going to have, or my daughter's having curriculum night for high school because she's about to start high school. Like, what do I do? And I've seen people make poor choices in that area, and their children resent them.
Yeah.
You know, family has to be first.
Yeah, family that has to be first. I've heard it said that the only person that's going to remember the long hours you put in at work is your family.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, the company is only going to ask for more and more. And I tell people this when I'm doing different coaching, career coaching with them, whether it's like for a new job or their current job, is that you teach people how they treat you, whether we realize it or not. It's a lot of times we will, like maybe someone will make a request and it might be something that's really urgent. That's great. But if you have already set the tone about this, you can be contacted at all hours or like really short deadlines. You don't have those boundaries. It comes back to what you said earlier. You let people overstep your boundaries and then they're doing it again because you taught them they can do that. And we often get upset. And I've talked to people about this. I was like, so is this the first, I could always ask, it's like, is this the first time this has happened? And they'll usually say, no, like usually I would do this, but in this particular situation, it doesn't work and they should understand, blah, blah, blah. I was like, actually, no, like you taught them this. And that's why sometimes even when I'm asked to do something at work and I can do it very quickly, like I will not just send it right away because maybe right now I'm able to do it very quickly, but that's not always the way it's going to be. So I will kind of temper myself and be like, okay, like I could probably get this done today, but I'm not going to work till 6 or 7 this night. I will get it to you tomorrow morning. Or a lot of times, maybe this isn't the right thing to do, but I'm all about under promise, over deliver. So I will get it to you by the end of the week and it'll show up in the inbox on Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. I'm the same way when it comes to like text messages. I'm like, later. And I could respond right now, but I don't want you to think that I'm like holding my phone and it's an extension of my hand. And every time like you text me, I even have it turned off on my phone where it says read, that whole read receipt thing. I don't even want you to know that I read it. I don't want you to know because then it's like you want me to respond. You're like, because people are watching, they're like, she read it. I know she read it. She read it at 6:52. Why isn't she responding? I don't even want you to know I read it. So I've turned the read receipts off. And my favorite feature is schedule send on emails, on post. And I'm like, send it tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Like, I just don't have to respond. And that goes also, again, with the money. If I accept this amount of money now, that's going to be your expectation in the future. And that's what you're going to tell people. And you get what you pay for. I'm sorry. You just do. And I'm not afraid to say that I'm not cheap. You know, and I shouldn't be. Like when you go to the doctor's office and you're there for 15 minutes, they might charge you $5,000, and you only saw the doctor for 2 seconds. He walked in and said, "Open your mouth, cough, whatever," and then he's gone, and you get that bill. You know, so I'm trying to establish for people value, worth, all of those things, and it's a hard place because I just don't have to say yes to everything. I believe that right place, right time, and that comes to all good things. Even if it's serving, and people might think this is heresy, but listen, even if it's church, they're like, Shaneice, oh wow, you're so great with doing the photography, and we want to have you here more. Can you serve more? I can't, because I have you have to keep those goals in front of you. You just do. And don't think that if you don't do it, it won't get done. You're not that important. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're just not that important, because God forbid you drop over, somebody will replace you. You are replaceable. But the fingerprint that you leave on the world doing the things you were created to do, that impact is everlasting. So I want to leave my imprint and the impact on the things that I'm supposed to do, and not just being a robot to fulfill somebody else's vision to make them happy or make their lives easier.
Wow.
That sounds harsh, but I didn't mean for it to come
I'm
across
saying
that
wow
way.
because it doesn't sound harsh to me. I'm saying wow because it's powerful what you said, because I think, and like, yeah, we're both people of faith. So it's like, I think in the church world, and I was talking to another good friend who does a lot of stuff in hosting, as in Maxwell leadership, all these different things. And it's like, in the church world, it can be hard to say no because we're just conditioned to serve and do all these different things. And we were talking about love God and pleasing people. And like, I'll say this, and then he'll know I was talking about it. We had a conversation, and it's really like we're supposed to please God. But then, no, I think I said, no, yeah, please God and serve people. Because at the end of the day, like, we can't just go into this people-pleasing thing. We're serving people, but first thing we need to do is please God, make sure order is making God happy. And then even with when Jesus was talking about, and I guess I'm getting into preaching mode, I don't know why, all I need to hear this, is that when they talk about the two commandments is love the Lord your God with all your soul and mind, and then the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. But the key thing is, if you can't love your neighbor if you don't love yourself first.
Say that again. Yes.
Yeah, you have to love yourself first before you can love your neighbor. I think we gloss over that. Oh yeah, love your neighbor, but love your neighbor as yourself.
Right. Which is why people have difficulty sometimes loving others, like you said, because they don't love themselves. So prioritizing, keeping everything in the proper order will prevent your life from being one of chaos.
Yeah.
A lot of people live in chaos simply because they don't sound like a parent. You don't have your priorities straight. You just don't get your priorities in order. But it's so true. Again, I have this whole list of things, and now I just, take this list and then let me put one thing that needs to be done. Just one thing, and get that thing accomplished and keep everything in order, in the proper order. Yeah.
No, it's so true. I mean, there's plenty of things that I want to do, and I'm like, no, I'm not supposed to be doing this right now, or I have to delegate it to someone else, or even stuff with the nonprofit. I have maybe way bigger dreams than I'm supposed to have. I don't know, regardless, but I just know taking it one step at a time and prioritizing different things. So I don't feel stressed because I'm like, okay, I have all these things in my mind, put them on the back burner for now. We're going to focus on these things first. Make sure I'm not stressed, make sure I'm taking care of myself so I can take care of others.
Yes. I was having this conversation on the way to the meeting where the lady has asked me to do the VP thing. And I was like, should I do it? Can I do it? And I kept going, what's going to be extra? And then it's like jolting me, like, Shaneice, listen, you're going to have to do leadership training. You're going, like, there are all of these other things that they're like, oh, it's not that much. Yes, it is. Is it something else to do? Yes. I'm sorry, the person that was supposed to do it is no longer available. And there's just always this pressure, to do more. You're not enough. You're not doing that whole thing, which, again, I hate to go back to, I won't say hate. I know this is not a religious podcast, but I always think about how things started from the beginning with the serpent basically telling Eve, you're not enough. You could be more. And that's the same lie we keep telling ourselves, and people are telling us every day. You could be more. You could know more. You could do more. All of those things. So I'm enough the way God created me, and I'm just going to stay in my lane and serve the purpose that I was created to do. Okay, can I say one last thing? I know we're almost to an hour here.
No, you're good. I was going to say, if there's anything else you want to talk about, like, as we wrap things up, go for it.
Yes, I did a speech recently about being a hammer or being a shoe. I wish I had my tools here with me. But this is my illustration of purpose, that if you have a hammer, you can use that hammer to drive nails. You can use that hammer to pull nails out, maybe even rip up carpet. And in the event that someone breaks into your house and that's the closest thing to you, you could use it to drive away crazy people. Now, I could also use a shoe to drive nails into the wall. I've seen people do it. Is that what it was created for? Is it the most efficient way to use a shoe? No, it is not. That's not what the shoe was created for. So oftentimes people are working outside of what they were created to do and who they were created to be. And they're a shoe pretending to be a hammer. And what happens when you're trying to use a shoe? It's going to take you longer. You might do some damage. You might put some holes in the wall. You might miss. It just wasn't designed that way. And so I want to encourage people to do what you were designed to do. Be a hammer, not a shoe.
I love that. Be a hammer, not a shoe. Do what you were designed to do. Wow. It just rolls off the tongue.
I need to write that down too. I'm going to have to go back to this podcast and write down all of these things and be like, oh, that's a t-shirt. Like, I need to get some merch like IncrediPaul. I need my merch.
No, yeah, you need merch. I can help you with that too because I have a third party that does it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I think like this happened the last time I had you on. There were so many gems that you dropped. That's why I was like, it's time to have Shaneice back on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. To talk about different things. I might even have you on again and we can talk about something else, but I think your voice needs to be heard more.
Thank you. I love to talk. Thank you.
It works out really well.
It's finally being put to some use. I'm not being punished and sent to my room.
You're not being sent to your room.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in your office right now, but it's your room and you chose to be there. No one sent you there.
Yes. No one sent me here. I'm not on punishment.
No, that's good. I want to make sure people know how to connect with you, whether it's your socials, websites, all those things.
Awesome. So if you go to my Linktree, you will have access to all of my social accounts. I'm still working, and I've asked my no longer secret mentor about his website and and what he's doing. So I'm working through that process as well to get the website up. But until then, you can reach me at linktr.ee/the-purpose-project-co. And you can contact me there. We can do discovery calls. We can talk about how I can help your organization. All of those great things. Love to connect.
Absolutely. So if you've been watching this podcast, you've seen that come across the screen a few different times. If you're listening, it's in the show notes, so you can click on it. And yes, let us get you that website if you need it, and we'll get it done from your no longer secret mentor. That's so funny because I feel like every time we talk, you say that. I was like, it's not a secret.
Not a secret anymore. He knows that I've been stalking him.
That's so funny. We'll get it done. But yeah, so it's been really incredible having you on this show, really talking about your journey from education, jumping into entrepreneurship, really continuing to learn and grow. Your passion for purpose is incredible. Like I say incredible all the time, but like really your passion for purpose. Like when I think of purpose, you're the first person I think of.
Yay.
Honestly. Because like what you do and helping people is truly admirable. So I know for this turning to the audience, like everyone that's either listening or watching this, shameless plug for YouTube to watch it. But I know you got something from Shaneice's story, like whether you feel like a hammer and you're supposed to be a shoe, or you feel like a shoe and you're supposed to be a hammer. Either way, make sure that you are, whether it's I think what you said was your pain, your passion, or your missed one, problem, pain, passion, problem. Figure out what your purpose is. And that is one way you can be incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible.